Today, we discuss what moves should we be making to set us up for championships. What should we avoid doing so we don't sabotage our dynasty teams? Also, what are we doing to avoid making mistakes out of boredom? Welcome into the Dino Construction Podcast. My name is Justin, joined by my co-hosts David and JP. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our future content we have coming up for you. Before we jump in, David is going to talk about something very near and dear to his heart really briefly.
Yeah, sure. And I think it should be near and dear to everyone in this community. It's a great part of the community. Just wanted to take a second to talk about the Scott Fish Bowl. The slow drafts will have started by the time this comes out. So the official start of the fantasy season for most of us, I guess the unofficial start. Very much looking forward to that. If you happen to be in Scott Fish Bowl 14, let us know in the comments below. Tell me what division, what pick slot. Feel free to follow on X. We love to communicate with anyone in that community. I'm in Average Shows division, pick 11. And just want to give a quick shout out to a late invite for a first-timer, JP, getting in this year. How you feeling, buddy?
Dude, I'm really excited. I didn't think I got in this offseason, and I told you guys, I was like, holy cow, I think I got in. Yeah, I'm at the 3 spot in the Ezekiel and Miss Tasty division. I've put in to enter the league a few times. I think I might have missed a year or something, but I'm pretty excited to try it. And looking at the scoring format, it looks like it's going to be pretty crazy. But yeah, I'll have to learn a thing or two from you, David, because as a first timer last year, you made it pretty far.
Just to kind of piggyback on that, I think I've seen him say on X before, if you've entered like 3 or 4 years, something like that, maybe and not got in, he really tries to get you in. So if you haven't got in yet and you've been entering, just keep entering. You'll get in eventually. It is a ton of fun. If you've never heard of the Scott Fish Bowl, do check it out because there's much more to learn about it than I could ever tell you. It's a massive redraft contest with thousands of people in a lot of different 12-team leagues. It's all for charity. Like I kind of mentioned before, most people see it as the unofficial start of redraft season. And when I say nobody's like us, I mean, like last year when I got in, not that this podcast is anything necessarily, but like last year I had no podcast. I had maybe a couple hundred followers on X and I hadn't tweeted in like 2 years. They will let anybody in. It's awesome. Their goal this year is to raise over $500,000 in charity. That'd be awesome. And then last thing I'll say real quick, I know this probably won't make it to any of them, but Scott, the whole Fantasy Cares team, what you guys have been able to do to turn this game of a game that we all nerd out on into something that brings so much joy and happiness to others, truly incredible. So great work. Keep doing what you're doing. Like I said, if you don't know about it, definitely learn about it. It's a great event.
Thank you so much for that. Really do think it is a very important event. Can't wait to hopefully be in it with you two next year. What was last week's community question moving forward?
Yeah, I guess just real quick, I want to point out that I made it through all of that. And I didn't even mention last year I was a semifinalist and a top 100 finisher. Aren't you proud of me?
I am so proud of you, David. They grow up so fast. No, I was so excited. We were all in a couple leagues following along with you, rooting for you. I think it's incredible how well you did, given the fact that you were playing against thousands of industry experts, people who, have been do this for a living, even, many of them. This is their day job, and you did so well. So definitely impressive.
Thank you. And just to be clear, it's not about winning or losing in this thing. It's all about the community. It's about having fun. It's about giving back. So I am proud of it, and it's something to be proud of. But even if you don't do well, you can get so much out of this, so much enjoyment, so many connections.
It is still fun to win.
It is. It's always fun to win. But anyways, let's get back on track here. Last week's community question was, what kind of moves are you trying to make during these slow months, and what are you trying to avoid doing? JP, you want to go ahead and read our first response?
Our first response we have here is from Awesome Dumpling, the OG. He said that this is the cheapest future firsts are going to be. I'm moving any older assets for youth plus on weaker teams. I want to read what the league is doing and take advantage of any trends I see. If people are sending 2 firsts for middle wide receivers, I'm selling my middle wide receivers. I want to avoid overthinking on good value moves. I think that if you can still sell your vets now for fair value, I would do it. But I think the veterans, they might be a little bit easier to move in August because that's when they start to turn towards, more of a redraft state of mind. But yeah, if you're seeing trends, I definitely think that this is the time to evaluate what those are and take advantage of those. But David, what is our next response we have here?
Yeah, next response is from Grubby Paws, he was in our mock draft, right? Appreciate you, Grubby Paws, for helping us out there. He says, trying to avoid filling needs, trying to sell into hype cycles, still have more wicks than I'd like. I'm assuming Dontavian wicks. I do agree. That's one of the things I was going to mention later is paying attention to hype and different narratives around players. And, I'll be honest, I kind of think I have more Wicks than I'd like to, even though I've been very high on him his whole career so far. Even when he started out, I'm a Packers fan, so I've been following him since we drafted him. I just think we're at a point where he's kind of priced in a way that we think he's going to be a top 2, maybe 3 receiver there. I think there's a good chance of it happening, but I no longer think the value is to where you could call him necessarily a sleeper. So if I can move him for a second, I'm willing to do so pretty much everywhere I have him. Justin, you want to go ahead and read our next response?
No, I'm going to give you a difficult question first. Say you have 5 shares of Wix. Would you move all 5 for a second, or are you holding on to any at that price point of a second to have some exposure?
I'd like to keep some exposure for sure. I would depend on the leagues. I have a couple where I have them, and I'd like to move them for the flexibility of a pick. But if I'm rebuilding, I'm looking at upside and things, I don't mind holding them on a team or 2.
Okay. I'd sell all 5 shares for a second, but I think I just love selling people. We have Trav Bob here, another OG, saying, trying to make moves to move my rebuild into competing by buying vet wide receivers that new rebuilders need to move, or crusty RBs, not giving up a first yet, or buying players that got hype, but have a track record of being just mid because I'm bored. Like as an ex-Bateman lover, they hyping him up, but we know he won't do nothing. Also selling excess wide receivers if I have them, as there is too many valuable receivers that all can't be a wide receiver 2, which hasn't worked yet because everyone's still deciding on their directions, LOL. So yeah, what he's saying there, that last part, I'm going to touch on that a little bit later, but a lot of people are tuned out. So you really got to figure out who actually knows what directions they're going in your league, because you probably don't have a lot of trade partners for everything right now. So that's a really good point of figuring out who actually does have a direction, because those are the easiest people to trade with, whether it's a team that's 100% committed to competing this year or a team that's 100% committed to rebuilding, because those are the teams it's easiest to identify needs for. Also, I hate Bateman. That being said, JP, what are you doing this time of year?
We know that this time of year it's pretty boring. I mean, in our dynasty leagues, even there's nothing really going on for the most part, and even in the NFL, there's nothing going on. But training camps do start pretty soon, and when they do, we'll be talking about the news coming out of camp, of course. But I want to be able to take advantage of the news that's coming out. One of the things that I want to do is I want to take note of the guys that are on the waiver wires, that are, guys who could be interesting if they do get some positivity around them. With training camp, there's going to be positive, there's going to be negative things. The negative things, I think, mean a little bit more overall. If you know who's out there, you can be quick to pick up a guy when, somebody is getting raved about, like Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua. Not saying we're going to find another one of those guys, but they were both guys who had a lot of positivity coming out of camp. Maybe you go trade, a 4th-round pick for Puka or something if you could have got that done, or, somebody. There's a lot of rookie wide receivers that we don't really expect a whole lot from, but if they look like they might have a role in a week, depth chart, whether that's a running back or wide receiver, if you know who those guys are, then you can go and pick them up before other guys get to them.
I do think that is something everyone is very much so on. I've seen so many posts on X, so many videos on who is this year's Puka Nacua and Tank Dell, that it makes me a little bit dizzy. I'm trying to avoid wide receivers in that range if they take me too far out of my roster construction. I just don't want to have too many wide receivers. I'm going to kind of walk through a little bit later on. I'm going to actually, in our next segment, walk through really briefly just a team where I have way too many wide receivers in that range of players who are hopeful upside shots. In fact, I have a couple day 3 wide receivers that are the guys I was just reading on X this morning could be the next Puka Nacua. If someone's going to do it, it's these guys. Maybe I shouldn't trade them. But really what I'm trying to do is I'm identifying players that I should be moving for any third. The types of wide receivers that just the right process is this guy should be off of my team. Even though there is definitely a chance I should be moving this guy, I'm really looking at the wide receiver and tight end position. I'm trying to make those numbers smaller to kind of the numbers I talked about. So wide receivers, number of starters plus 2 or 3 is ideal roster construction for me. I don't want much more than that. Tight ends is 2, 3, or 4, just depending on the severity of the premium, is probably what I want to have. 2 if there's no tight end premium, ideally. 3, 4, potentially 5 if they're all actually like decent assets in a higher tight end premium. So one example, I do have a league where recently I traded for Travis Kelce as my tight end 1. Because I switched from rebuilding to competing. I, before then, was planning a really great strategy called throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it sticks. You guys should try it sometimes. It's a lot of fun. I had superstar players such as Jonnu Smith, Mike Gesicki, Taysom Hill, and Zach Ertz, all of whom I have picked up off of waivers in the last 6 months in that league, assuming that if I'm going to go to transition to competing and I can't buy a different tight end, maybe one of these guys can stick. But now that I have Kelsey there, I have honestly no idea. Like, I think Taysom Hill probably has the best upside out of all those guys, but they're all kind of just trash heaps. Guys that they're all like, yes, you can start them at a pinch, but if they're my starting tight end, I'm not happy. And I don't think I'm smart enough to know who's going to be the best of those, besides the fact that I think that Taysom Hill probably will have the best single week out of any of them. That's the only thing I feel comfortable in.
You might also have the worst.
He probably will also have the 0 at some point. You're correct. So what I'm trying to do is I put all of those guys out for any fourth, and I'm currently also trying to sell them for any backup running back that I feel comfortable in, and any backup quarterback that I feel comfortable is the actual backup quarterback. My goal is to only have one of those guys by the time the season starts, and to sell the other ones for fourths or the type of players that I would want to pick up off of waivers, and the players just are not on waivers that I would want. So the basic thing, like, this is the number one thing I'm trying to do, is I'm identifying the players that really aren't worth having this many of this type of players on my rosters, and I'm patiently seeing what that I would actually rather have on my roster for can I try to turn these players into. And I'm not trying to make like superstar altering deals here, right? I'm trying to grind small margins. My dream situation is if I can turn this guy into a fourth and then still pick up, like Andy Dalton is on waivers in that league, I think that's a super smash deal. It's not a huge important thing, but I do think that like turning that into that flexibility of a 4th round pick and then freeing up a roster spot that I can take Andy Dalton, that if CJ Stroud goes down, try to turn him in the 4th into a 3rd or something. Maybe even if I can see if I could just get a 3rd for him, who knows, right? Like, so that's mostly the types of moves that I'm trying to do. Not a big time of year that I'm trying to do anything. I'm not trying to sell vets like we kind of talked about. I think JP mentioned that because I think I can get more in the point scoring season for them. So, and also kind of what Trav was saying, a lot of guys aren't willing to start moving guys just yet. So unless I have a really hard start to the season, I'm probably not looking to make too many big moves right now. Usually I'm trying to make moves after week 1, 2, or 3 as a team starts to panic and start a fire sale. By the way, the Tobias from Arrested Development, like, fire sale bit is one of my favorite things of all time. David, what are you trying to do this time of year?
Yeah.
We're having a fire sale.
We'll go a little more in depth on a couple of these things here very shortly. Patiently working towards my preferred roster construction, especially with competitive teams. You should already have identified what you need before the season starts, or what you want before the season starts, I guess. There's no urgency quite yet, but you can still be looking for your ideal situation. You know, say you need a tight end, you find the top guys that you're interested in. You find a manager maybe has 2 of them or something, so you reach out and say, are you willing to move off of one of these guys? But just slowly working towards it, not getting impatient, but still, if you can knock down a couple of dominoes before we get into training camp, that helps. Pay attention to NFL news, specifically how coaches talk about players, how other players talk about players, that kind of thing. So that way you can sell on hype or buy on anti-hype. I don't know, negative narratives, whatever you want to call them. And also kind of on that, staying active on waivers, kind of for similar reasons. And then outside of what your team does, like a specific team, you join new startups if you're bored. It's a good time to do that. You can do best ball drafts, whether on Underdog, DraftKings, or whatever. Just enjoy some life outside of football. There's other things going on, and we all love football. It might be all of our favorite hobbies, but there are other things in life, and this is a good time to experience that.
I acknowledge this is possible.
And then kind of more importantly, I think, are some don'ts. This one comes up a lot, but don't trade just out of boredom. If you're going to make a trade, make sure it actually makes sense for your team still. Don't join more startups than you can handle, because then you're going to give away orphans in the next year or two. And there are too many of those out there to begin with. We don't like seeing leagues go under. Another thing, I don't like to ignore trade offers, even if it's not something I'm interested in or I'm too busy to even consider it. I still like to decline and then, give a little message that says, hey, I'm too busy for this, or this isn't something I'm interested in, or, whatever. I just don't want the manager to feel ignored. And then this has already been kind of mentioned a few times, but don't sell your veterans at a discount. Point scoring season is right around the corner. Just be patient and wait for them to gain their value there. So, JP, you want to go ahead and read next week's community question for us?
what are some things you look for when identifying breakout candidates? Who are some of your favorite breakout candidates for 2025 and why? And Justin, where can the community respond to that?
Well, if you are watching on YouTube, we would love nothing more than for you to reply in the comments below. We have a pinned thread. You can also start your own thread if you are a trailblazer. We respect that too. No judgment here. You can reach out to us at DinoConFF on X/Twitter/ whatever you want to call it. It is funny. It does say X.com now, but Twitter.com still does route you to there. Like they're paying for 2 website domains. How do they afford it? Or you can also reach us at dinoconstructionff@gmail.com. Have gotten a few emails to there. Love hearing from you. Any way you want to reach out to us, can also reach out to our personal X accounts as well. All of those are available in the episode description below wherever you listen or view. We love your responses. We also love when you reach out about anything else, but really want to hear from you about those community question responses. So that being said, we are going to move on to trying to give some sort of actionable advice. I'm going to start out with a little bit of a monologue because I like monologuing. That's why I got into podcasting. I mean, I guess I got hosts too because I know no one wants to listen to just me monologue, but still want to do a little bit of it. So I'm going to walk through a Dynasty roster that I have using the tool dynastydaddy.com. So from the homepage on dynastydaddy.com, right, we've shown this before, link in the episode description. You type in your username. You can also do this for anybody else, like we've talked about. You can see all of their teams that they have. I'm going to look at this one, American Football Association of America, and I'm going to look at power rankings. So this is probably my team that I have the worst roster construction in out of any team that I have. So I am first in assets, it says, but 8th in starter ranks. It's a kind of a weird league. I am 11th in draft rank because I traded my 25 third. We were not allowed to trade future picks until this year. Now we can trade 26 picks. We made an amendment to the league bylaws. So nobody has any more draft picks besides one person has my third. That's the only future pick that's been traded at all. So as a result of that, I had a lot of picks this year and I was not able to roll a lot of them forward. So looking at my team here, I have from the rookie draft class, I have Xavier Legette, Ricky Pearsall, Roman Wilson, Troy Franklin, Javon Baker, Luke McCaffrey, and then other rookie running backs I have Braylon Allen, Bucky Irving, Isaac Guerrero, Eric All, tight end. I have rookie quarterbacks Drake May, Bo Nick, and Jaden Daniels. So I just have a lot of rookies and not a lot of future draft capital. So like looking at this team here, I basically have to, when I look at the league, what I start doing is on the side here. I mean, there's a couple things I do. I look at starter rank right here and I sort the league by starter rank. They have me in 8th. So I kind of evaluate the other teams ahead of me and I make an assessment. I've already done this off camera, but looking through these teams, and if you watch our video on how to evaluate like future first you should target, I can look at these mid frisky teams and decide whether or not I should be betting against them. Do I think I actually can be better than them, or do I want to try to go towards the bottom? Is there somebody already on the bottom? And this is a unique league where everybody has all their future picks. So there's nobody who's already beaten anyone to the bottom. So I have to make a decision. Should I be moving all in or all out? Basically, I don't want to be in the middle probably. So you can look right here on the side at playoff calculator, and I can see that right now I have a as is 24% chance to make the playoffs. There's a lot of teams here. The 6th seed seems to be up for grab. Up above here, I do feel that some of these teams are kind of iffy. So I would say the 5th and 6th seed are kind of entirely up for grabs. Probably the 4th as well. There is a pretty much guaranteed top 2. So I need to basically feel out with the rest of my league mates essentially. Am I able to move to the top to get into the top 3 where I feel like I'm pretty confidently in the top 3, or do I need to try to move down to the bottom? I also want to look at, are there moves that I can be making regardless that I think are just a good process? So basically I reach out to other teams and I try to see, can I turn Bo Nix into a starting running back or wide receiver of fair value, or Kirk Cousins, or even Drake May potentially? I want to try to move 1 or 2 of these guys, specifically Kirk Cousins because he's old and he's the only one I feel comfortable won't hold any value. I want to ideally see, can I flip Roman Wilson, Josh Downs, Javon Baker, Troy Franklin? It hurts me to say, but I have to admit, Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Hyatt, any of these guys into draft picks that are about the fair market value for them. I have 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 wide receivers. And given the fact that I have JJ and Puka at the top of this wide receiver room, and I can only start at most 4 wide receivers, I don't really ideally want more than 6 or 7 wide receivers on this team. So I have a lot of work that I want to do. And the biggest thing I'd identify on this team is I want to try to liquidate these wide receivers. The most important thing I want to do is find those draft prices. And this is one where this is something you guys have talked about. And now what I want to do is try to offer those to every single team in the league for if I think they're worth a 3rd round pick, because I have so many. And I don't mind having player takes sometimes and betting on them. I'm going to offer, though it pains me, Luke McCaffrey for any 3rd. I'm going to offer Roman Wilson for any 3rd. I'm going to offer Javon Baker for any 3rd to several teams because I just have too many players that I can't afford for all of them to potentially bust. There's another direction I could go, and let us know in the comments below if you would rather just hold on to all of them and see if any of them hit a 1st in value. But to me, kind of the direction I'm thinking of going is holding on to Leggett, holding on to Pearsall, unless I can actually turn those guys into a player that I actually believe in, and try to liquidate all of these wide receivers for 3rds, 2nds, potentially like in a Josh Downs. Maybe I want a little bit more, and then trying to see if I can either roll a quarterback forward into a future 1st or turn them into an actual starter. When I talk through this process, is there anything you guys think I'm missing on what I should be trying to do on this team, which is really the only one I still have a lot of work to do on?
I still don't know how to consider this because you weren't allowed to trade picks earlier, and that doesn't make sense to me. So catch up on that, I guess. Take advantage of that while that people are eager to trade their new picks. I don't know. I've never played in a league like that, so I don't know how to adjust. But I think your logic all sounds sound.
Yeah, I mean, I guess decide which direction you're going to go. If you're going to compete, you could sell 1 or 2 of the quarterbacks to get some more proven production, or you're going to probably sell a running back or 2, like Najee or Warren, to help with your rebuild. But yeah, I guess that's the only thing I could say is just figure out which direction you're going to go.
Yeah, I have some trade offers out. I'm trying to get Tyreek and JT in one fell swoop without giving up any of my core starters right now. So we'll see if I can make anything happen. But yeah, I want to make all of my moves one way or the other kind of at the same time. So I do try to line them up. This is the only one where I am trying to I'm just in talks. I'm feeling out. And I'm also feeling out with other frisky teams in the middle. In fact, Flying Scotsman, we DM sometimes. If you listen to the podcast, you at least know I have one. I have the added benefit of he has Tyreek Hill and Jonathan Taylor. And if I can get those 2 players off of him in one move, not only do I get the pieces that I need to compete, but I remove the guy immediately ahead of me in starter ranks and playoff probability. So just another kind of little meta strategy that I'm thinking there. On most rosters, I'm not thinking big, giant sweeping moves like that. I tried to make those at the times when the rookie picks were higher in value. Those are usually things I try to do earlier in the off season. At this time, normally I'm just trying to grind the edges and margins a little bit more. So now that I've talked forever, we're going to move on to JP. What are you looking at this time of year to actually take action on?
Yeah, speaking about grinding the edges, one of the things that I want to start to look at is the league matchup schedule in my Dynasty leagues. Because, once the rookie drafts finish, the season schedule is, open and available on Sleeper, that you can look at who you're playing and what the other teams, who they play twice more specifically. So pretty much in a 12-team league, which, you can adjust this accordingly, but I think the majority are 12-team, at least all of ours are 12-team leagues. But basically there's a 14 regular season games for the most part. And that would mean that with the 11 opponents that you play, that there's going to be 3 teams that everybody plays twice. So you can kind of look at do I play the 3 teams that I play twice? Is it, are they contenders or are they rebuilders? Is it a mix? And you can kind of evaluate each team. So like Justin was talking about with Dynasty Daddy there, you can see which teams are the frisky teams, right? These are the fringe playoff teams. Now see who do they play twice, right? Do they play all 3 contenders twice? Or all frisky with, contenders mixed in there? That means they're probably a little bit less likely to make the playoffs. Or do they all play, 3 real rebuilders? There's this team, okay, that guy plays 3 real rebuilders. His chances of being in the playoffs, that definitely bumps it up maybe 5-10% or so, depending on if you have a league median. That if you have a league median, this probably affects it a little bit less so, but it still will matter. I want to target firsts on those fringe playoff teams that, have one of those more difficult schedules. If they play 2 contenders and 1 frisky team, it's like, okay, well, their chance to make the playoffs obviously are a little bit lower. Now, this isn't going to be, a guarantee, of course, but this is just one of those small things that you can do to kind of grind the edges to, this is a game of probability. And if you can kind of, get a little bit of an advantage there, then I would look to do so. And actually, I have a good example as well. And I had David's first in one of our leagues, and he has a strong team. He's actually the defending champion, and I thought he was one of 3 or 4 teams that probably was going to get a bye week. And I saw his playoff schedule. He didn't play a single team twice that was projected to make the playoffs, at least in my eyes. And so I was like, okay, well, that means his odds of being a 1 or 2 seed are a lot higher. So it made me a little bit more motivated to move that pick because I figured, he has a good chance of having a first round bye.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons I'm really glad we started this podcast, because that's actually like I think about a lot of things, a lot of next level things. How can I get an advantage? That is actually not one I had considered, is really truly deep diving into the frisky teams, like looking at their I look at, like I showed you Dynasty Daddy's playoff percentages, and I kind of use that, the starter ranks, just who they have. But I've never actually dove in through and looked at every matchup one by one on it. And I know that sounds like a lot of work, and I'm in like 13 leagues to do that, like in every league. But I mean, I have time. Who are we kidding? I'm going to start doing that 100%. That's a great idea, JP. That's brilliant. Yeah.
You just have to look at the first 3 weeks because it just cycles through. Whoever you play weeks 1, 2, and 3, that's the team that you play week 12, 13, and 14, the teams that you play twice. So yeah, you just really have to look at those first 3 weeks matchups wise.
The things you learn on YouTube, man. David, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point by JP there. Don't read too much into it, though, because things change so much. I wouldn't overcommit from something like that. But in the example JP gave, I think that was perfect use of that strategy. My biggest tip for this time of year is to be as active as you can. Look, we're all humans. We all have lives. I work a ton in the summer. That's my busiest time of year. So I'm not even as active as I'd like to be right now. But I still pay attention to the NFL news. I still check in on my leagues. I still check in on, comments and messages to me, trade offers to me. You really want to try to pay attention as much as you can, read headlines every day if you can. As we've mentioned before, this gives you an opportunity to sell players on positive hype. It gives you a chance to buy players whose value is dipping. I know the Jamar Chase drops was a little bit more into training camp, but when he was a rookie, people were like, oh, you can't catch the ball, or something about the white thing on the college ball that's not on the NFL ball. I don't remember. It was silly, but you could buy him as cheap as he ever was, honestly, even cheaper than when he was in the rookie draft. Positive hype. I remember the way Tomlin was talking about Jaylen Warren as an undrafted free agent. I ended up having him on every roster because I followed that news cycle and I picked him up around this time of year everywhere. I've now sold him everywhere since, but it was a great influx of value for just paying attention, essentially. Another thing, you can send out a bunch of offers and see who responds and who doesn't. The people who don't pay attention, I'll still send an offer or two and let it just sit in their inbox till they get there. You just got to be careful, because if you send out a guy and you're trying to get back someone who gets injured or something, then they might take that offer and you might have forgotten about it, and all of a sudden you don't love that offer anymore. So don't forget about it, but don't be afraid to let something sit in an inbox of someone who's not paying attention. And then the people that do pay attention, you can, you guys have said, this isn't a great time to work out some bigger deals. I kind of disagree, because I'm bored. So are the other people that pay attention. We can actually spend a little time talking through something rather than just sending offers back and forth. So I do think it gives you a little time to actually talk through some intricacies of some bigger deals. But also, people do trade out of boredom. If you're not one of them, way to listen to what we're saying, but go find those people. Go take advantage of their boredom and get the value increase that they're willing to give you.
David, kind of talking about what you're saying there, I really feel like there's a huge similarity between online dating and summer fantasy football, right? It's like you have that slow burn where you text every day or two, right? And you'll get back when you get back, right? It's not so urgent like it is in season, and then trading out of boredom. I mean,
yeah,
it's the same thing.
Oh, that's funny. That's a fun analogy there. And then just real quick, just to expand on what not to do, kind of mentioned this above, but it's not a good time to trade point scorers. I've still sent out some offers, and I'm willing to send out offers, but I want the price that I deem fair. I'm not really willing to sell at a discount anymore. Point scoring season is right around the corner. Just be patient, wait it out. People are going to start buying things once they say, oh, I'm a surprise contender or something. Maybe I just need a Mike Evans or something to plug into my lineup and I can really be a true contender. Wait till that starts to happen, and then you can start selling those guys for a little better of a price.
Yeah, patience is a virtue. So we do want to try to avoid making moves out of boredom. We want to try to stick true to our process. We did mention, of course, there are new startups. There is best ball, but David has been trying to push this idea to me about life outside of football. So we're just going to do a short section below. We have timestamps below. You can skip ahead, but we're going to just real quick If you're not interested, skip it. But we're going to talk about our favorite media content shows or some live music that we're going to be going to in the next little bit. JP, start us off. What is something you are watching right now?
Yeah, I'm not a big movie person, but I really love TV shows. And lately I've been watching through the TV show Lucifer. It's on Netflix. I really love that show. It's really good. And The Circle, that's something that's very popular. It slowly releases the episodes, 3 or 4 at a time. And that's always pretty interesting. But I also wanted to, illustrate, I'm really excited for the Netflix wide receiver show, which it follows the 2023 season of NFL receivers Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, Debo Samuel, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and George Kittle. So you bet your butt I'm going to be watching that show.
Wide receiver George Kittle. I like that.
Right? They just threw him in there.
I have not heard of either of the show you mentioned, so when I saw it in the show sheets, I thought it was one show called Lucifer and the Circle. Yeah, I just finished season 3 of The Bear on FX. It's streaming on Hulu. Fantastic show about a restaurant. A lot more to it, but if you're in the restaurant life, you'll enjoy the show. Watching The Acolyte on Disney Plus. I know apparently there's a lot of people that are not enjoying it. I think maybe their expectations are a little high, as most people's expectations have been lately with new Star Wars content. I also have the added inside joke with my friends. The character, if you've ever seen A Good Place, it was an old show. It's pretty funny. The character, I think his name was Jason. He was kind of an airhead. That actor plays a role in The Acolyte, and those characters are nothing alike. It took me like 2 or 3 episodes to place him. Once I finally did, though, we've had a ton of laughs about it, so that helps the enjoyment. Watching The Boys' new season, super gory, but fun show if you haven't started it yet. And also enjoying House of the Dragon. Not quite as gory as The Boys, believe it or not, but also still kind of dark in its own ways. Man, I love live music. I'm going to be going to Red Rocks here this week, actually, for a couple nights to see my favorite band, The String Cheese Incident. Get out there, enjoy some live music, enjoy some community. Those are just some fun things to do right now.
Glad you mentioned that last part there. I'm also watching The Acolyte and The Boys. We'll start watching House of the Dragon soon. Watch the first season. We'll start watching the second season sometime here. I just started watching an anime show available on Crunchyroll called Freeern Beyond Journey's End. I think it slaps so far. I'm like halfway through the first season. It's on Crunchyroll. Highly recommend if you're into anime. Just finished Attack on Titan finally as well. And based on you mentioning Red Rock, because I'm actually moving from Germany to Colorado in just a second here, about 3 weeks now, 2.5 weeks. So I looked up shows at Red Rocks afterwards and saw Santana and Counting Crows at the end of July. Counting Crows is one of my favorites. I just love that from my old middle school angsty days. JP, that's probably from before your time.
I don't know what Counting Crows is. You're
You're like, I know how to count and I know what crows are.
I imagine you've heard some of their songs before, though.
Have you seen Shrek?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know Counting Crows. That
All right.
They did the whole soundtrack, I think.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And so, yeah, that's what I'm doing to try to avoid trading out of boredom. Half the time when I'm watching shows, though, I'm scrolling on my rosters looking for trades still. I gotta set the phone farther away. What can you do? So we're going to play a game that is half trade segment. Tell me which side you take. And I also want you to tell me, was this trade made out of boredom or for an actual purpose? We don't know that for sure, but we know that. I'm going to start with David here. Sam Howell or a 25 third? First, which side are you taking?
I'll take Hal here on pretty much every roster, I think, honestly. I like the upside. I also don't really think this is made out of boredom. I think that's a fair price if you're trying to get out of him. I think it's a fair price to pay if you're trying to get him.
Yeah, I probably took fair price trades for a lot of these. There were a lot of really bad ones, and I tried to take the little bit better ones. So we might not have too many boredom trades. But that being said, Jacoby Brissett or a 25 third, JP?
I think that, David, when you're in the season, are you trying to sell these backup quarterbacks for a third? Because I think I'd prefer the third. I think I hold these guys to try to get a third because oftentimes I don't think I can get a second. So I'd probably take the third.
I think for someone like Brissett, yeah. I think if Hal were to take over the starting job in Seattle, you could get a little more than a third, though.
Just him specifically. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, I think the difference there is one of them has a chance to ascend in value. The other one, his value window has a finite ending point, which is when he loses the job eventually, which we don't know when that is. So because of that, I would take this now sooner rather than later as well. Boredom or not boredom, JP?
No, I think it's fair.
I think we'll stop boredom or not boredom because I think I made all of the trades too fair. I wasn't thinking about that when I was picking them out. Darnell Mooney or 25 third, David?
I do think this one could be argued it was made out of boredom, to be honest with you. At least from the guy trading away the third for Darnell Mooney. I just don't see a reason to do that right now. I'm taking the third.
JP, which side you taking?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the third. He's not going to make a big difference.
Jerome Ford or 25 third, JP?
I'll take Jerome Ford. I mean, he's probably solid production this year, and I think he's a decent, even after Chubb does come back, if he comes back this year, he's at least a decent backup to hold.
David, Raheem Mostert or 25 third?
Assuming I'm anywhere close to competing, I'll take Mostert. Even if I'm not, I'm probably going to hold till we get into point scoring season and people remember that he scores a lot of them.
JP, Sam Darnold or 25 third?
Oh, I'll take a third. I can't get a third for him.
David, didn't we both trade 25 thirds for Sam Darnold in different
Yeah, we
leagues?
did it
with
the
each other?
opposite
We did a
direction.
swap. We just- yeah. I bought him for a third in one league, and then the next day sold him to you for a third in a different league. Everything is
It's pretty
valid,
funny.
just like Thanos intended. Gus Edwards or 25 third?
That's a little less so than Mostert, where if I am competing, I'll probably take Gus Bus, but if I'm rebuilding at all, I'll sell him for the third right now.
And last one I have here, JP, 25 third or Ty Chandler?
I'll take Ty Chandler. I think he's a usable guy that you can plug in your lineup and has upside.
Just some general moves. Most of the time there, we're taking about half the time we're taking the third, half the time we're taking the player. Kind of also depends on if we're competing or not. In a rebuild, we're probably taking the third over any of those running backs. Would you hold Jerome Ford and hope to get a 25 second in season if you were rebuilding, or would you just take the third now as profit in case Chubb is back?
I might only wait like a week or two because I mean he might come out of the gates hot, but I don't want to hold him too long. So yeah, I wouldn't mind trying to get a second by like week 2 or 3, but if I can't, then I'll try to get the third.
Didn't they also add Deonta Foreman?
I have a
in the
lot of
offseason?
Deonta Foreman on my
Yeah,
rosters.
I think I'd just take the third and cash out right now if I could. I understand holding him, but there's a lot out there that could go wrong for him. So
Check your waivers to see if Deonta Foreman's out there, by the way, guys. He is still in a decent number of leagues. Nice stash just in case. Could be worth a third someday or a spot start. So thank you for joining us for another episode of the Dino Construction Podcast. We hope this was as useful for you as it was for us. Please make sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen or view. And from all of us here at the Dino Construction Podcast, until next time.